Sea level rise is accelerating quite rapidly.
We're noticing more regular climate change events. Rather than every few years, we're having a few every year now.
We've built our infrastructure quite close to the shoreline and it's at risk.
Wharves, jetties, the tracks and all the biodiversity values.
People talk about the time when the harbour boiled with the abundance of fish.
If the mudflats are drowned, that would be a huge loss of important habitat.
We're going to be dealing with communities that could be isolated.
Networks below the ground, water supply pipes.
Wastewater and wastewater infrastructure may be affected by sea level rise.
So we need to make sure that the structures are built to adapt to climate change. My name's Paul Devlin. I'm the head ranger for Te Pātakau Rakahatu, the Banks Peninsula region. A team of us look after all of the parks and reserves around the peninsula. A lot of the areas that parks look at, people might regard as not one of life's essentials. I'd have a different view on that, of course. Wharves, jetties, those sorts of structures. Not only are they assets that people like to recreate on, but they also have very strong social and community features to them. You know, grandparents got married on them and all those sorts of things. But also really importantly is they may become our lifelines of the future as well. If the roads are washed out, particularly in Whakarapo here, where we have some very low-lying levels of road, if they fail, then our wharves and our jetties might become the lifeline assets. The goods and services coming in, evacuating people, bringing families back, all those sorts of things that enable communities to keep going during tough times. So we're really starting to think hard about how do we build things in the future and make them more resilient.
So we're standing on Governors Bay Teddington Road at the moment, and this is one of the lowest points along this particular section of the route, and it is prone to flooding. Part of that is because the water can't escape as it comes down the hillside and is met at the culvert by the water coming in from the sea, and it can't escape.
The Governors Bay Teddington Road is the sole access for many people, and we think it's going to be increasingly more vulnerable. There'll be some shorter term and the medium term maintenance options that will certainly help, but at the same time I think we need to be preparing for where those roads are going to be in the future.
So as the levels of the sea rise, we're going to find it increasingly challenging to maintain stormwater assets like these culverts. We'll also have flooding of the road network, and it's harder and harder to get the stormwater out from behind the roads.
In Rapaki, coastal erosion could eventually impact the wastewater pump station. If the pump station is damaged, we won't be able to pump the wastewater, and therefore the residents in Rapaki would be left without a wastewater service. We should also consider that there are some private infrastructure. Sea level rise will certainly impact private septic tanks, and that would definitely have an impact on both residents and the environment.
We've certainly dropped the ball when it comes to our kaitiaki responsibility. It was no small coincidence that they called the place Te Pātakau o Rakai Hautu, the Great Pantry. In the 60s that all went. Tie that to change in the tidal flow because our foreshore got covered in sediment from deforestation. It had a profound effect.
Salt marsh ecosystems are now nationally rare. About 10% remain in the country. They've been lost through land reclamation and urban development. Not only are they a really, really important part of the functioning marine ecosystem, they are essential habitats for native wildlife. Teddington itself is the best example of what remains. It's essential that with sea level rise we allow for the migration of the tide back. The water wants to move further inland, the salt marsh will go with it and will naturally colonise the areas if it's allowed to.
When we talk about engineering interventions, there's always a range of impacts that can occur. If we stop that sea movement, if we go and do heavy engineering work along the coast, we might lose that habitat. There's a number of ways we can work around that. Thinking about that for the road, that might be more culverts beneath the road, for example, to let more water flow. Or there are other options, of course, which you might be moving the road away from that space so you can leave that very valuable coastal environment to move by itself.
We can invest a lot of money into seawalls and we can protect. inevitably that will suffer some sort of catastrophic event. So if we're seeing areas that are constantly getting inundated by salt water, then perhaps they should be salt marsh.
We've got to weigh up how much realistically can we get out of the road through maintenance, how long can we extend its life for.
Problems are going to become more apparent with climate change and rising sea levels. Land is going to flood. With all that, there's both losses and opportunities.
I think the council is highly motivated to get the best outcome for the ratepayers of Portahi Christchurch, to connect experts with community members so that we can think about the ways we want to interact with our coast in the future.
There's certainly a sincere desire to engage with those who are going to be most affected by climate change, and a genuine willingness by all to find best solutions for trying to address a huge threat.